My parents favored my sister. After I paid their medical bills, so I moved out and left them begging me to return home. I'm 28 now, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one in my family. The one who keeps the lights on, pays the bills, and shows up no matter how tired or burnt out I am. I didn't ask for that role. It just happened. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being their son and became their safety net. Growing up, I watched my parents brag about my sister, Lily, like she was some kind of angel sent to bless their lives. She was the baby, the princess, the one who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the dependable one, the quiet fixer who cleaned up every mess behind the scenes. When Lily forgot to pay her tuition, I covered it. When Dad's car broke down, I stayed up past midnight figuring out the loan paperwork. Nobody ever asked if I could afford it. They just assumed I'd handle it. I remember once, during dinner, Dad looked at Lily and said, "You've always been such a ray of sunshine. We're so proud of you." Then he turned to me and added, "And thank you for helping out, son." Helping out. That's what my entire life boiled down to. Helping out. It's not that I hated them. In fact, I loved them more than anything. I just thought love meant sacrifice, that if I kept giving, they'd eventually see my worth. But lately, that belief has been cracking. Every thank you that never comes, every favor that's expected instead of appreciated, chips away at me a little more. Last week, Lily called me asking for money to buy a new phone, even though she already had one. I sent it anyway. When Mom thanked her for being so thoughtful about keeping in touch, something inside me went quiet. I didn't say anything then, but for the first time in my life, I started wondering if my love for them was costing me more than I could afford. Every morning felt the same. Alarm at 6 a.m., quick coffee, and straight to work. I worked 2 jobs, juggling spreadsheets by day and freelance projects by night. My friends used to ask why I never went out anymore, and I'd laugh it off saying, "Family first." But what I really meant was someone has to keep this family from falling apart. My parents depended on me for everything. Groceries, rent, repairs. If something broke, I was their first call. And no matter how exhausted I was, I always showed up. I told myself it was temporary, that once they were stable, I could finally breathe. But temporary became years. Meanwhile, Lily lived like she had the world at her feet. She still stayed in the family house, didn't pay rent, worked part-time at a boutique, and somehow always had money for vacations and new outfits. Mom would scroll through her Instagram, smiling, saying things like, "Look at our Lily, living her best life." I'd stand there, half listening, wondering what it must feel like to be celebrated for simply existing. One night, while sending money for my parents' utility bill, I caught my reflection in the laptop screen. I looked older than 28, eyes tired, shoulders heavy. My apartment was small, cluttered with unopened mail and cold leftovers. I realized I'd built a life that revolved around keeping their lives running smoothly. A friend once told me, "You can't pour from an empty cup." I laughed it off then, but now, I could feel how empty I'd become. The more I gave, the less I seemed to exist. When I called Mom that weekend just to talk, she cut the conversation short. Lily had stopped by with cupcakes. "I'll call you later, honey," she said cheerfully. She never did. That night, staring at the unpaid rent notice on my counter, I realized something harsh. In this family, my love had turned into obligation, and my silence had turned into permission. It was a Thursday night when the phone rang, Mom's voice trembling on the other end. "Your dad's in the hospital," she said between sobs. "He collapsed at work. They think it's his heart." I remember the room spinning for a second. My chest tightened, but instinct took over. I grabbed my keys, called in sick, and drove straight to the hospital. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and fear. I found Mom sitting outside the ICU, clutching her purse, eyes red. She didn't even look up when I arrived, just whispered, "They said it'll be expensive." I didn't hesitate. "Don't worry about the cost," I said, even though I barely had enough to cover next month's rent. That night, I drained my savings, signing every financial form they handed me. Lily showed up the next morning wearing sunglasses and holding coffee. "This is so scary," she said, snapping a photo of Dad's hospital bed before posting it online with the caption, "Family is everything." Mom hugged her and said, "You're such a good daughter." I stood there in silence, watching the woman who raised me, comfort, the one who contributed nothing but attention. For the next 2 weeks, I slept in waiting rooms, eating vending machine sandwiches, and checking work emails between doctor updates. No one asked how I was holding up, No one thanked me. When Dad finally woke up, the first person he asked for was Lily. I was sitting right beside him. She breezed in 20 minutes later, smiled through tears, and held his hand like she'd been there all along. He whispered, "My little angel." I looked away, pretending to check my phone, but something in me cracked that day. I'd sacrificed everything: money, time, sleep. Yet somehow, I was invisible. As I walked out of that sterile room, I told myself it didn't matter. He was alive. That was what mattered. But deep down, a small voice whispered something I wasn't ready to face yet. "They'll never see you the way you hope they will." A few weeks after Dad was discharged, things at home felt off. I visited every evening to check on him, bringing groceries and helping manage his medication. But every time I walked through that door, I felt like a guest, not a son. Lily was always there, sitting next to him, scrolling through her phone, pretending to keep him company. Mom would beam at her like she'd single-handedly saved his life. Then it happened. We were sitting at dinner one Sunday when Dad raised his glass and said, "Let's all thank Lily for being our rock through this tough time." I froze. My fork hovered midair. Lily smiled softly, eyes glistening. "Oh, Dad, I just did what anyone would have done." I wanted to laugh. Anyone? She'd barely spent 2 nights in the hospital. I glanced at Mom, waiting for her to correct him, to mention who paid for the surgery, who missed work, who slept on those plastic chairs. She didn't. She just smiled and said, "You really kept the family strong, sweetheart." Something inside me twisted. I cleared my throat. "Actually, But Mom cut me off with a wave. "Let's not make this about money, dear. Lily was there for us emotionally." I couldn't find words. That sentence, "not about money," hung in the air like poison. Because to them, my sacrifices weren't love. They were expected. Duty, not devotion. After dinner, I helped clear the table, while Lily bragged about how scary the whole ordeal had been for her mental health. Mom nodded sympathetically, then looked at me and said, "You're strong, son. You don't need as much attention." Driving home that night, I stared at my hands gripping the steering wheel, realizing I'd spent years trying to earn something they'd already decided I didn't deserve: their admiration. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted it anymore. The following month was brutal. My savings were gone, my car needed repairs, and I was behind on rent. Every dollar I earned went to catching up on bills or keeping my parents afloat. I told myself things would calm down once Dad fully recovered, that they'd finally recognize everything I'd done. But recognition never came. One night, I called Mom to ask for a small favor, just to borrow a little money until payday. She hesitated, then said softly, "Oh, honey, we'd love to help, but Lily's starting her business, and we've promised to support her." I blinked. "Business? What business?" "She's launching an online boutique," Mom replied, her tone proud. "We gave her a little push to get started." "A little push." That phrase repeated in my head like a taunt. I wanted to scream that I was the one who gave them every ounce of stability they had, that I paid for the surgery that kept Dad alive. But instead, I just said, "Got it. I'll figure it out." That night, I sat in the dark of my small apartment, staring at the wall as the hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been replaced, not as their son, but as their provider. The next morning, I opened social media and saw Lily's announcement post. "Dreams do come true. Couldn't have done it without my amazing parents." The photo showed her holding a ribbon outside her business, while Mom and Dad smiled beside her. My stomach dropped. The same parents who turned me down were funding her vanity project. I closed the app and sat there, trembling, with something I hadn't let myself feel in years: anger. Not the kind that fades after an argument, the deep, soul-level kind that comes when you finally see people for who they are. That was the night I realized something terrifying. I'd built my entire life around people who only saw me as useful, never as loved. A few weeks later, I got a call from my aunt, the kind of relative who always knows everything. Her voice was hesitant. "Sweetheart, I didn't want to say anything, but are you aware your parents used the medical fund you set up?" My chest tightened. "Used it how?" She sighed. "They told everyone you insisted they give the leftover money to Lily for her business, that it was your idea." I froze. For a moment, I couldn't even process what she'd said. "Wait, what? I know," she interrupted. "That's why I'm telling you. They said it made you happy to help your sister get started. Everyone's been praising you for being such a generous brother." I hung up, hands shaking. Generous brother? No. They'd lied. They'd stolen the money I worked overtime to save. My sacrifice had been rewritten into another chapter of Lily's fairy tale. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, the city lights bleeding through the blinds. My heart pounded as memories replayed. Every bill, every sleepless night, every promise that family comes first. All of it built on manipulation. I didn't call them right away. Instead, I stopped sending money. I wanted to see how long it would take before they noticed. 2 weeks later, Mom called, cheerful, like nothing had happened. Hey, sweetheart, just checking. The transfer didn't come through this month. Everything okay? Yeah, I said flatly. I just needed a break. Her tone shifted instantly. A break? From your family? That word, your family, hit like a slap, as if they weren't mine anymore, as if I was abandoning something sacred. I didn't argue. I just said, you'll figure it out. You always do. And hung up. As I sat there in silence, anger pulsed through me, sharper than ever. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt. I was done pretending I didn't see what they were doing. I lasted another week before I couldn't take it anymore. The lie, their lie, burned inside me like acid. Every time I tried to sleep, I pictured Lily smiling in that boutique, living off the money I'd worked myself to exhaustion for. So, one Sunday, I drove to my parents' house unannounced. When Mom opened the door, her expression flickered. Surprise first, then unease. Oh, you should have told us you were coming, honey, she said, stepping aside. The house looked the same as always. Warm lighting, family photos, the faint smell of Dad's aftershave. But the comfort it once gave me was gone. Dad was watching TV, and Lily sat on the couch, typing something on her phone. She didn't even look up. I stood there for a moment, then said, We need to talk. Mom frowned. About what? The medical fund, I said quietly. The money I gave you for Dad's surgery. Why did you tell people I offered it to Lily? Silence. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Son, why are you bringing that up now? We're family. Money shouldn't come between us. I clenched my fists. It's not about money. It's about honesty. Lily rolled her eyes. Oh, please. You're acting like we stole from you. You've always had everything. Your own place. Your job. I just needed help. Her words hit like a slap. Help? You call taking my savings help? Mom raised her voice. Watch your tone. She's your sister. That word, sister, suddenly felt hollow. I looked at each of them, realizing there was no remorse, no shame, just entitlement. Dad crossed his arms. You're overreacting. We all make sacrifices for family. Right, I said, my voice shaking. Except in this family, I'm the only one who does. No one spoke. The silence was heavier than any argument. I turned toward the door. Don't worry. You won't have to deal with me much longer. Mom's voice wavered. What does that mean? But I didn't answer, because for the first time in years, I didn't owe them one. I didn't go back to their house after that day. Weeks turned into months, and the silence between us grew heavier. I thought cutting them off would bring relief, maybe even freedom. But instead, it just left a hollow ache that followed me everywhere. Money was tight. Without the constant overtime, my finances were already strained. Then, as if life wanted to make a point, my car broke down on my way to work. I had to start taking buses. Long, crowded rides that left me drained before I even clocked in. Rent notices piled up on my counter like silent accusations. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit in my small apartment staring at my phone, half hoping it would ring. It didn't, not once. My parents didn't call to check if I was okay. Lily didn't text. The family I'd carried for years didn't even notice I was gone. One evening, after a brutal double shift, I scrolled through social media, and there it was. Lily had posted another update. So grateful for my parents' love and support through the tough times. Family's everything. In the photo, she was smiling beside a brand new car. My car had died 2 weeks ago, and she'd gotten a new one, probably bought, with the same money I'd once bled myself dry to earn. I don't know what broke me more, the hypocrisy or the realization that they were doing just fine without me. That night, I sat on the floor, head in my hands, feeling like my whole life had been a cruel joke. I'd given everything, time, money, love, and ended up with nothing. No family, no savings, no peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the responsible son. I just felt invisible. And as tears burned my eyes, I whispered to no one, "What was it all for?" Rock bottom changes you in ways comfort never can. After that night, something inside me snapped, but not in anger this time, in clarity. I realized no one was coming to save me, and maybe that was the best thing that could have happened. I picked up extra shifts, not for them this time, but for myself. I sold my old furniture, downsized, and started rebuilding, quietly, piece by piece. It wasn't glamorous, but every small victory felt like reclaiming a part of myself they'd taken. I even started running in the mornings, something I'd stopped years ago because I was always too busy. With each mile, the weight of guilt and resentment began to loosen its grip. Months passed, and slowly, the silence that once haunted me began to feel peaceful. I stopped checking Lily's social media. I stopped waiting for my mother's name to pop up on my phone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living for anyone else's approval. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. "Mom." I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Her voice was shaky, nothing like the composed tone she always used. "Honey, we need your help." I went quiet. "What's going on?" "It's your father," she said, her voice breaking. "The business, the house, everything's falling apart. Lily's, she's in trouble. Her boutique failed. We might lose the house." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. The same house I'd helped keep afloat for years. The same family that vanished when I needed them. Mom continued, "We can't do this without you. You're the strong one. You've always been the one we can count on." Her words used to fill me with pride, but now all I felt was numbness. "I'll think about it," I said softly. And for once, I meant it, not as a promise, but as a boundary. It didn't take long before "we need your help" turned into "you have to come back." My phone buzzed every day, missed calls, voicemails, long texts dripping with guilt. "We're still your parents," Mom wrote once. "Family shouldn't turn their back when things get hard." I ignored most of them, not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. I'd spent nearly 3 decades bending over backward for them, and now that I'd finally stopped, they called it betrayal. After a week of silence, Dad called. His voice was firm, almost commanding. The same tone he used whenever I was a kid. "Son, we're not asking for much. Just a little help to get things back on track." "A little help?" I repeated, bitterly laughing. "You mean like the time I paid for your surgery? Or when you drained my savings for Lily's business?" He sighed heavily. "You're being dramatic. We've all made mistakes." "Yeah," I said quietly. "But mine was believing that love meant sacrifice." He didn't know how to respond. The silence on the other end was long, heavy, uncomfortable. Then he said, "You're still part of this family, whether you like it or not." That line used to guilt me. Now, it just made me sad. "You only say that when you need something," I said, and hung up. For the first time, I was the one ending the conversation. 2 days later, Lily texted me, a simple, "We miss you. Mom cries every night. Please come home." I almost believed her, until I saw her next post. A photo of her at a fancy cafe, captioned, "Tough times don't last." They weren't crying, they were scheming. I put my phone down and exhaled. The guilt was gone. All that remained was clarity. They hadn't lost me. They'd just lost control. I don't know what pushed me to do it. Maybe closure, maybe curiosity. But that weekend, I drove back to the house I grew up in. The driveway looked smaller, the garden neglected, paint peeling from the front door. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage I'd already outgrown. Mom opened the door, her face lighting up with desperate relief. "You came," she whispered. Behind her, Dad looked worn, older, humbled in a way I'd never seen before. Lily sat at the kitchen table, arms crossed, her phone face down. A rare sight. We sat in silence for a moment before I finally spoke. "You said you wanted to talk. So talk." Mom started first, her voice trembling. "We know we've made mistakes. We weren't fair to you. We took you for granted. But we're still family, and we need each other now more than ever." I looked around that kitchen, the same table where I'd once done homework, while Lily was praised for singing at some school event. The same walls that heard every "we're proud of you" meant for her, never for me. I leaned forward. "You don't need me. You need someone to fix what you broke. That's not family. That's dependency." Dad frowned. Watch your tone. No. I cut him off. You don't get to control the tone anymore. You lied to me, used me, and then erased me from the story you told everyone else. You didn't just take my money. You took my trust. Lily looked up, her voice small. I didn't mean for things to get so bad. I met her eyes. No, you just meant for them to work in your favor. The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time, they had no defense. I stood. I didn't come back to fix anything. I came to say goodbye, properly this time. Mom reached for my hand, tears welling up. Please, don't leave us like this. But I already had. It's been almost a year since that day, and I haven't looked back. I moved to a new city, got a better job, and started fresh. No guilt, no obligations, no phone calls demanding that I sacrifice myself in the name of family. For the first time, I wake up without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing on my chest. Mom sends texts sometimes, short, careful ones. Hope you're doing well. We miss you. I don't ignore them out of spite. I just don't feel the need to reply. The old me would have rushed to fix things, to apologize for existing with boundaries. The new me knows silence can be its own kind of peace. I've learned to enjoy simple things again. Morning coffee without a phone buzzing in the background. Weekends that belong entirely to me. I started saving money for my future, not someone else's crisis. Every dollar, every breath feels like a quiet rebellion against the years I spent being their crutch. Last month, I heard through a cousin that my parents had to sell the house. Lily moved back in with them after her business collapsed completely. I didn't feel joy or revenge, just clarity. They were living in the world they built, one where accountability never mattered until it came knocking. Sometimes I think about visiting, but then I remember how small I felt in that house, how invisible I became every time I walked through its doors. I don't hate them. I just finally love myself more than I pity them. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Family isn't who demands from you. It's who stands with you when you have nothing left to give. And after a lifetime of giving everything, I finally chose me.